The most surprising thing about the protests in Syria is, where do ordinary simple people get the funds to buy weapons? How do they have access to so much ammunition? Who is supplying them with these guns and who is funding them? If you see the normal behaviors of any outlaws, at the most what they will do is hold people hostage in a supermarket or in a building and press for their demands. That's the most any outlaw will do to press the government to get their demands fulfilled. If you saw the protester behavior in Egypt and Tunisia, which were actually democratic revolutions by the people, there were no guns involved. People didn't start killing each other. Everything was peaceful, with dialogue, in a democratic way. Here, take a look at a few photos of the protests in Egypt. Do you see any guns in the hands of people? Do you see any bombs being exploded? Do you see any cities being bombed? Or do you see simple, ordinary people on the streets demanding what they want? This is the voice of the people. This is democracy. What's happening in Syria is malicious. The question with Syria is, how can simple people afford to hold a few guns in their hands and be ready to take down their entire government? Since when does this happen? Let's ask Hillary. Hillary has a lot of intelligence on this issue. She knows every major political figure from the Arab League. She seems to know a lot about Assad as well. So Hillary, do you have any intel on who is supplying the protesters with weapons and funding? As for today's economy and high expenses, it is terribly difficult to get across 1 month without a job. These armed clashes on the streets have been going on since more than 10 months now. To be able to survive for 10 months without a job, that itself is incredible. Now we have hundreds of people out there with guns in their hand, involved in an armed conflict with the government. An armed conflict with the government means a huge supply of weapons. It is a very expensive activity, and this cannot be done without a powerful source of funding in cash and weapons. So do you know who is supplying them with the weapons? Let's take a look at a similar pattern of armed protests in Libya. The armed protesters there also had your heartfelt support and affection. Eventually, you and your friends decided to release funds to them to overthrow the regime in Libya. Later, we also supplied them with weapons to help them out. Now in Syria, you are very touched with all the civilian deaths and would like to stop more casualties. We all know that. Could you please use your connections and links in the Syrian neighborhood to stop the supply of weapons to protesters, so that we can follow a peaceful democratic process like it happened in Egypt and Tunisia? We know that you're very connected to this issue and you know many people that are involved in this. Could you use your connections to stop the supply of weapons in the best interests and safety of the Syrian people? We have already seen the discipline followed by the United States government within its country. Let alone guns and weapons, protesters are not even allowed to pitch a tent in the park. There's so much discipline maintained here, so why not the same in Syria? What we need right now is the immediate stop to the bloodshed in Syria. The government is not insane over there. They will not send in tanks if the protesters were not heavily armed. We need a stop to the killing, and that can happen when there are no guns on the street. Stop the supply of weapons in Syria, Hillary.